Hello, everyone. For today's episode, we have Shane Dias with us. Thank you so much, Shane, for taking our time and agreeing to be part of this interview session.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's absolutely a pleasure to be doing this. I can't wait to be sharing, whatever insight I can with you guys.
So, Shane is actually doing a very, very interesting work these days. And I think it really fits into the kind of conversation that we are going to have in the next couple of minutes. Shane is working as a sports journalist with CNN News 18. And sports journalism, as fancy as it may sound, it is definitely a very interesting thing to do if you are genuinely interested in sports. Um, Shane, to just start with, let me throw a very simple question on you, the answer of which might be a bit difficult. But
Go for it.
but when we talk about the sports industry going digital, what does
Yeah.
going digital exactly mean? What's happening?
See, that's the thing. It's a very complicated answer, quite frankly. As you said, it is a simple question, but the answer is a very complicated one. So when you say going digital, obviously most of these news outlets, whether it be TV channels or newspapers or magazines, are all launching their own websites, are maintaining it more frequently. And of course, there's increased presence on stuff like social media. So
Right.
you want to be making more videos, you want to be ensuring that your stuff is tweeted properly, you want to have a presence on social media,
Hmm.
Facebook, YouTube, you name it. So
Yeah.
going digital would essentially expand to that. But I think a lot of the things. So one of the interesting parts about going digital is that for now, it's not exactly a revenue stream for a lot of places.
Hmm.
Like even your more prominent digital outlets, like if you go for say a scroll or whatever, are now having to turn to subscriptions because otherwise it's very hard to just live off the ad
Okay.
revenue which you get
Okay.
off Google. So in a
Hmm.
lot of cases, this is why traditional media is actually thriving right now. So if you take newspapers or news channels, because they make money off their newspapers or the
Hmm.
ads and stuff like that. So they
Yeah.
actually reinvest a lot of that into the digital side of things.
Hmm.
So that's what it is essentially right now. When you
Hmm.
say it's going digital, is that there
Hmm.
is increased focus with the hope that obviously because this is something of the future that it might not be profitable now, but one day in the future it will be. So I think that's the key part of going digital. And of course, it's something that is ever changing because
Right.
you don't really know what's going to come up. The digital
That's
world, I think,
true.
I remember, yeah, it's absolutely interesting. So I remember when TV came, our first thought used to be, oh God, it's so instant. But it's way more instant for this digital. Before a news article is up on a website, I can send you an alert via the app. I
Hmm.
can send out a tweet. I can send out a Facebook post.
Yeah.
I could post a fleet. I could do anything. And this is all very instant, and it's instantly giving you the news. As soon as this happened, as soon as I got to know from someplace, this is there. There might not be a large copy on it, but it's there, and it's very instant. And just like that, there's
It
a lot
is.
change,
Yeah,
and there's
and
a
I
lot which
think
is changing.
it is, and it's very unprecedented, because no matter how precise of a digital strategy you come out with for publicizing a specific tournament that's going on, that same will not be valid for tomorrow's publicity. Things are just
Absolutely.
changing, or maybe for the second
Yeah, yeah.
match that very day.
Yeah, definitely. So we have to. So when you're working digital, one of the things which is very important of focusing on would be search engine optimization, or what
Hmm.
people would know as SEO. So a
Right.
lot of that depends on what kind of little tricks, techniques, etc. you use to ensure your stuff, is visible on Google if people are searching for that stuff.
Right.
So what I was doing today and what was working today might not work tomorrow because Google very frequently updates the algorithms. You have to
Right.
kind of be in touch with all of that. So for that, obviously, you have people who work in SEO who you have to work with in tandem, and they let you know,
Hmm.
okay, what was working say a month back is not really working now. So let's try
Yeah.
something different. These
Yeah.
kind of things, yeah, it's definitely challenging. It's ever changing. It's very fast,
It
and you
is. It
have
is.
to be on your toes at all times. There's no two ways about it.
Always, just always thinking something very creative. And the thing with digital perspective in general is it is not something that you could learn. There is no
Yeah,
specific
absolutely.
course which could teach you what is to be done correctly.
Yeah,
You
that's
learn.
the thing. New media as a whole is a very evolving field. So I mean, sure. I mean, I remember this because when I was doing my masters, you'd also remember we had a new media class or
Right.
course. But
Right.
whatever you learned there actually has little to no use when you actually reach the industry
That's
because
true.
it's teaching you stuff which you already know. It's like, oh yeah, you have to have a website, you have to have a blog, you have to be on social media.
Yeah.
Cool, I'm already on all that. What's next?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
And you
true.
don't really know any of that till you actually get dropped in the middle of the job and you're like, okay. So I'll give you an anecdote for this just as an example. So my first day of work, I reach, and obviously because you have a ton of HR related nonsense to do.
So this you're speaking about CNN News 18, right?
No, this is my first day of work when my first job, which was in Hindustan Times. That was in
Okay.
2017. So
All
just
right.
a few months after graduation, I got through there. And so our first days, you generally around, you're doing HR related work, this, that. So most of it went in that. So like by the time I was done with 8, 9 hours, I just asked my boss, can I leave? He's like, yeah. So I said, okay, what time do I come tomorrow? Because I have no idea.
Right.
And he says, so yeah, there's the Champions League final tomorrow. So you can come in at 7. I'm thinking 7 in the morning. So I said, wait, he said the Champions League final starts at midnight. Holy hell, he just called me in at 7 o'clock in the evening.
Okay.
I'm like, what? And then I said, yeah, it kind of makes sense because, this is digital for you. It has to be instant coverage of whatever the hell's going on. And that was my first full day at work. I'm doing a 7 o'clock shift. I'm leaving office at 2:30 in a company cab.
Okay.
And so this is a kind of challenge which is very rare. This is my first full day at work. I have no
So I think
clue
that's the
what's
thing
going
with journalists, with sports journalists, if I would say, there are days when there may not be a lot of work to be done, but then there are days or weeks together when there is so much to be done where you have to take out 24 hours of your time.
It's true for journalism in general. So again, I'll give you another anecdote here, which I think should be very interesting. So this 2019, the general election is going on. So at that point, because general election work requires so much digital updation, they told people from other beats, they're like, you know what, never mind. You guys aren't doing your stuff today. Forget sports, forget entertainment, forget lifestyle.
Yeah.
Come on to the main desk. So I'm working whilst the election is going on. I'm being dropped smack dab in the middle of that. And I'm like, I have no idea how any of this works. It's running on the fly. And I think I worked 12 hours that day. So I went in at around 7 in the morning and I left office at 7 in the evening.
That's how the life is.
Yeah, but that's pretty much how it works.
No, that's it's really interesting. So Shane, tell me one thing. If we were to talk about the sports industry today, or if I were to specifically talk about IPL, the IPL these days, the IPL of 2020 has become more of a theatrical show, not theoretical, theatrical show, right?
Yeah, definitely.
You don't have live audiences, you just have, specific number of players with the management team. How is it covering that? How do you plan out to cover this entire thing, which is completely based on the performance of people, where you do not have anybody in the background cheering for the players? How is it? How is it experienced?
See, so there's not much of a difference in terms of how we as journalists cover it. Sure, I mean, there's no crowd, which makes things very different.
Yeah.
Because you're watching an empty stadium and there's these matches going on. And it's like, wow. But then that's been the reality for the past few months now. So whenever around the world, so I think in around the early parts of the summer, once like the first wave of coronavirus kind of started dying down in a lot of European countries, they brought back their respective football leagues, all of course behind closed doors. So you were kind of used to the experience, but it's definitely something new now, especially I'd say more so for the common viewer than it is for anyone else. Why so? Because obviously there's a lot of emphasis on the TV product, and of course the Star Sports, which is the broadcasters, are pushing Hotstar nicely now because obviously people mostly being at home, there's more and more people watching the match. In fact, I think the first week actually broke a record for both Hotstar as well as TV because there's so many people. No one can go to the stadium, so everyone has to go and watch it, whether on Hotstar, whether on Star Sports. So so it worked well for them. And of course, the major challenges which they have from a production standpoint, TV production standpoint, is normally the fans' noise adds a lot to the atmosphere, even if
it is. Yeah.
So right now, what they've done is they've put in what is referred to as canned noise.
Okay.
So they have generic cheering and booing and stuff like that, which goes on whenever
keeping up the morale of the players constantly.
Actually, I don't think it's at the stadiums. I think it's only for TV users.
Oh, really?
So it's not for.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be really, trust me, it sounds really bad in a stadium if you can hear canned noise. I can tell you that from experience. There's nothing quite like a crowd there. So the canned thing is more for TV viewers where they have the noise playing. So it's not actually that bad. Of course, I think there's sometimes production glitches. So say, for instance, if a player's hit 6, the ball's reached. As soon as normally if there's a crowd, as soon as the players hit a 6, that wah goes up. And so here the players had a 6. It's almost reached the boundary, and then the crowd noise is starting up, and I'm like, oh, the production guys just did a boo because you messed up there. It should have been happening instantly.
No,
so these are the kind of things which you see right now.
So as consumers, for us, we may not feel a lot of difference while viewing it, but for, like genuine fans who would want to be a part of the stadium while these shows are going on, for them it makes a
Yeah.
huge difference.
Oh, definitely, definitely.
Yeah. So
So
this
like,
brings me to the next question,
yeah, go on.
With everything going digital, what do you think is going to be the future of the tournaments in India or globally? Be it World Cups, be it T20s, be it any other, be it Kabaddi leagues,
Yeah.
how is it going to be digitally? Promoting it, having people to be a part of it, taking care of all the COVID precautions. How do you think this entire industry, this entire ecosystem is going to change now?
See, I think a lot of it depends on when you get a vaccine, for one.
Mm-hmm.
Because as soon as you get a vaccine and people are immunized from it and you've pretty much killed the pandemic,
Yeah.
then at that point you would see people getting back to the stadiums as normal. I think what will happen and what is happening in certain places. So, for instance, in Germany, their football league new season started,
Mm-hmm.
and because they managed to clamp down on cases relatively early, so what they are doing is they are allowing in X number of fans. So
Mm-hmm.
they will allow the stadium to not be filled, not to full capacity, but
Mm-hmm.
they will have social distancing norms maintained, and there'll be like say 1-2,000 fans there, which of
Right.
course still doesn't compare because I mean there are certain stadiums in Germany which have a capacity of say 60-70,000. You have 60-70,000 fans all cheering, all baying for
Yeah.
blood.
Yeah.
That's a different feeling altogether.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I think a lot of leagues, what they're doing to adapt is so, like the NBA, when they started their season. Now,
Hmm.
another thing which a lot of these leagues have had to encounter is the concept of a home and away advantage.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you want to minimize travel right now because you don't want to be causing clusters of the thing
Right.
spreading,
Right.
which is why it's happening in UAE in like 3 cities. So it's
Mm-hmm.
Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and Sharjah. That's it.
Right. Right.
All of these teams will be based in and around, and it's very close by. So
Mm-hmm.
what happens with home and away advantage, and of course no fans being there? So you're actually seeing some freaky results. Some stuff which is going on which is just not right. So normally what happens is, and it's a very cliche thing, but players feed off that energy.
Hmm.
They really need that crowd energy to get them going, some
Yeah.
of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's true for a lot of them. So like for instance, like in the football league which is happening in England,
Hmm.
there were some really freaky results which were happening which would not have happened, at least not to that degree, if I believe fans were there. But so what is happening? Like, so as I was coming back to the example of the NBA, when they were completing their season, they
Hmm.
had all the matches in Orlando, Florida. So
Mm-hmm.
obviously they wanted some degree of fans. So what they did was they installed these LED screens on where the seats are,
Right.
and they allowed fans to kind of as a
Hmm.
TV viewer, what I can see is
Uh-huh.
the matches going on. I can see the faces of all these fans on the LEDs things.
Mm-hmm.
So another example, which is not exactly sports but professional wrestling, the WWE,
Mm-hmm.
when they were running shows early on during the pandemic, it was totally no fans.
Right.
And then they started bringing in very few fans, all masked, all socially distanced,
Mm-hmm.
very limited. And
Mm-hmm.
now what they've done is they've gone into this sort of arena where they've set up all these LED boards.
Mm-hmm.
And fans from all around the world can have like a
Yeah.
registration thing where they
Yeah.
can feature on TV.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
you're having that fan experience, and the noise will be coming through some degree to the athletes. It's not to the full degree because, of course, we have to be careful.
Yeah, that's true.
We don't
So
really know.
having virtual presence of fans in the stadium is going to be very important simply for increasing the morale of the players,
Yeah,
Otherwise, in
definitely.
the coming time, I mean, the psychological performance of the players might just be affected because of this.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
in fact, I think these would all be very short-term measures because a lot of leagues are
Mm-hmm.
obviously, it's a monetary thing not having fans there.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, Manchester United, every time they play a game behind closed doors in their home stadium,
Uh-huh.
are losing up to £4 million in revenue.
Oh, really? That's a
That is
lot.
not small money.
Yeah, that is a lot.
Yeah, so £3 to £4 million of money is being lost every single time they're playing behind closed doors
Mm.
because it's not just what they get from the tickets. So, say for instance, in the stadium they have like a lot of these clubs have what you refer to as mega stores.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the mega stores will have merchandise and stuff like that which fans normally buy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just that though. So you have these food stands and places where fans go to buy beers
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. So you take that entire cost and then you're losing an estimate of £3 to £4 million.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest clubs in the world.
Yeah.
Imagine how people lower down the food chain would be getting hit.
Totally, totally. So talking of the revenues, talking of the finances surrounding the players or surrounding the entire game channel.
Industry. Yeah.
So what do you think is overpowering right now? Is it the esports industry, the virtual
Yeah.
gaming industry, or the traditional sports? Um,
Um,
just to add on to that, what do you think would be the future of the virtual gaming industry in the coming few months? I'm not even talking about a couple of years. I'm just talking about
Yeah.
things that just quickly change, because every time we watch IPL, we see
Yeah.
the match that's going on. But after a couple of minutes, we see constant Dream 11 ads, which is coming on, which is an example of the virtual game industry, So it's a nice
Right.
comparison
Yeah.
of how you see two different gaming industries being portrayed in front of us. So what do you
Right.
think
Right.
is the effect in the new generation that's in terms of gaming industry?
Yeah. It's definitely there's going to have some impact. So what you're talking about, A, is fantasy gaming, and B, esports, which are
Right.
again two somewhat different things, because esports is basically at
Yeah.
this
Could you
point
just
almost
like give
considered a
one
sport.
liner difference between esports
Yeah.
and what virtual gaming is?
Okay. Yeah. So esports on one hand would be actual contests where you organize tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
But whereas for fantasy gaming, all I have to do is download the app and anyone can play. So you actually have professional gaming is a very real thing.
Right.
It's just catching on in popularity now as more and more people are, kind of accepting and playing video games way
Mm-hmm.
more.
Right.
Obviously, I think even as kids, we all did it, but nowadays it's very widespread. And
Mm-hmm.
so professional gaming is very much a thing. So you had your PUBG tournaments and your Call of Duty tournaments and your FIFAs and NBAs all having their tournaments, which is like,
Yeah.
it's a lot of fun because it's quite a different level. So I used to think, okay, who would be interested in watching these guys play video games that I can play myself?
Mm.
Then I realized that these guys are operating on another level of play.
Right.
Much. And as for the fantasy gaming thing which you were talking about, yeah, it's not just so Dream 11 is going to be the title sponsors for this year's IPL. In
Mm-hmm.
itself, a massive thing considering it's e-gaming, as you said. People would not
Yeah.
really be
Yeah.
wondering, like, oh, yeah. And
Mm.
then it's not just them. So you have another one called Mobile Premier League. So
Mm-hmm.
they have a couple of IPL teams which are sponsoring. So I think Kolkata Knight Riders
Mm-hmm.
on their jersey, their primary sponsor on the jersey here is Mobile Premier League. They are
Right.
also partners with Royal Challengers Bangalore.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can see that there is a lot of scope there for growth of these games and stuff like that. There's a lot, and quite frankly, it's not yet untapped. But I think the potential for that is vast.
Yeah, it is.
People don't quite know.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it would be something fun to watch out for.
No, absolutely. We'll have to wait and watch and see how this entire gaming industry changes.
Ah,
The
yeah.
the perception of how we consume a lot of things. So Shane, just one last question, before we end this interesting discussion around sports. Um,
Yeah.
we know that a lot of new generation in India are interested in sports, right?
Right.
Watching it, playing it, etc. But a lot of them might not exactly know how they could be a part of the sports industry when it comes to covering it, be it managing the sports industry, be it something else.
Right.
And given the fact that you have been in this industry for a couple of years now,
Hmm.
what do you think should be a couple of skill sets that the new generation should be adapting to, versus what's the new attitude skills that people who are genuinely interested in being a part of the sports industry should be learning?
Right. So I think there's one which is an old school skill and one which is a new school skill. The old school skill, of course, would be that you have to be well versed in whatever it is you enjoy. So if I enjoy watching X number of sports, one sport, two sports, three sports, doesn't matter. I
Yeah.
should be well versed enough that I can, cover multiple angles on stories, live updates, breaking news, etc. So I should be well versed enough.
Mm-hmm.
It shouldn't be at a point where, say, a story is breaking and then I'm like, okay, who's this guy? Or what is the issue here? I need to know, like, oh, this has happened, this is popping off, this is big. So
Right.
that is a very old school trait which we all had to have, especially so back in the days when, Google didn't exist to give us all information possible at our fingertips.
Hmm.
And as for new school, I think that you need to be well versed with how the digital world works, particularly social media. So
Right.
ideally have a presence on there before you come into journalism. So, have a
Okay.
nice little Twitter account for yourself, definitely an Instagram account, maybe a YouTube or something if
Okay.
you are so inclined.
Okay.
So definitely that would be the new school skill, because you need to be able to know how it is you use these things.
Mm-hmm.
Because I remember one of the first things which I had to do in terms of like this digital thing was in my first job itself, not even a few months in, we had to do Facebook Lives.
Okay.
So you're sitting in a little studio setting, or if you're just using a phone also, and you hit the live option and you have to discuss something. You,
Right.
couple of others, you invite questions, etc., etc. So that's another thing. I think you need to work on your confidence a lot, like to work on public speaking, how you present yourself. That's also very key, because it might not be your main brief. I mean, we were doing this in a newspaper for crying out loud, but we still had to speak on camera and had to do it in a way that people were not yet bored enough to tune off.
Mm-hmm.
So that would definitely be the other skill. Be very well attuned with the social media world in general.
Okay. So everybody who is thinking of joining the sports journalism industry, make sure that you feel confident enough to be able to present your case in front of people, and do learn the tricks of your own social media publicity and your own personal branding before you think of landing
Right.
for a full-time
Absolutely.
job in the sports journalism industry. Shane, thank
Yeah.
you so much. It has been a really interesting session. I personally learned a lot of things about, how the entire ecosystem is changing. Thank you so
Yeah,
much for your
it's
time.
it's ever changing. No, no, trust me, I had a lot of fun myself. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much, Shane. We really hope that we continue having such discussions around in the near future, and you keep coming and telling us what are the new developments in the sports digital
Yeah,
industry.
yeah, definitely. I'd certainly enjoy that a lot.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye.